You open your eyes and are greeted with nothing but darkness. You try to scour your memories for a hint to how you could have ended up in a place like this, but other than faint threads in your own name, not only do you not get an answer, you hardly remember anything prior to this very moment. As you process that, you hear murmuring around you, confirmation that you aren't alone. But this is a small relief, short-lived, as you gather that they don't seem to have any idea where you're all at either. With only one option available, you go through the exit and greet the strange world before you. If you were a character in Grimgar, these would be your very first moments in what's more than likely the rest of your life. A new world with no memories of where you came from. This is what Haruhiro experiences, and that's how Grimgar Fantasy in Ash begins. And it is one of the most beautiful and human stories I have ever gotten to experience. Grimgar of Ashes and Illusions is a fantasy isekai anime, but not like any you may be familiar with. We meet the requirements of... But our cast isn't given a guide that knows the world well, or given a direction that could attribute to world building or an overall goal. Grimgar is just the most real interpretation of if you took a bunch of teenagers and put them in a fantasy world. So they're terrible. Like, it takes them 2 episodes to kill a goblin, which is supposedly the weakest monster in Grimgar. Something more action-inclined viewers may be a bit frustrated about. While the world is inspired by video game logic, much like other isekai, it's a lot less video gamey and more like a world that a game would take place in. Skills can be learned with money, but they're physically taught. Killing monsters can be financially viable if you know what's worth taking. Instead of having a world that plays to the strengths of everyone who has been summoned, it's a world that has its own rules and flow that these volunteer soldiers, which they're called, have to adapt to and survive in. And if they're lucky, afford their volunteer soldier badges that makes them graduate from trainees for whatever benefits that may include, and also as proof they can survive and do well in this new world. All for the low price of $19.99. You know, you can actually get one for like $3 on Temu. Grimgar often gets the critique that it's just too slow-paced. Our main band of volunteer soldiers led by Monato spend the first 2 episodes fumbling with their weapons and skills trying to get the hang of this new world. But there isn't the immediate tension that should bring because they choose when or when not they're in danger and are perfectly safe whenever they're in the main town. Time that could have been spent in combat or raising tension is often given to our party having a day off or inter-party drama, or how financially not well they're doing. You know, I can't believe that this is a light novel that passed on having a title like, I got reincarnated into a fantasy world in the lower middle class. And if you're thinking, hey wow, you're right, everything you said is too slow and sounds really boring, first. Second, this deliberate approach to the story isn't an accident. The calmer moments are just as beautifully and thoughtfully directed as the faster, more actiony bits, as stated by the director himself. So what I would consider as admittedly fairly slow-paced, it's not a weakness. What is that fucking... If you've heard an elevator pitch about Fantasy in Ash, chances are it involved the lines of how realistic the series is. Heavy swords accidentally carry momentum and get lodged in the trees. You gotta get really close to use a dagger. It's easy for an arrow to miss its mark. Starting off, this is what that realism means in Grimgar. Movements have a believable rigidness as our characters try to clumsily replicate what they were taught with the whole lack of confidence they got going on. And these 6 characters are our bona fide strugglers, the party being comprised of Monato, the level-headed priest, leader, vanguard, I don't know, he looks like he'd probably DM a D&D campaign, Moguzo, the gentle but large warrior, Ranta, the annoying but ferocious dread knight, Yume, the airheaded but brave hunter, Chihiro, the shy mage, and our main character, Haruhiro, who's a thief, or rogue, whatever you want to call him. This is the group that we get to see grow as volunteer soldiers and as a party, developing chemistry on and off the battlefield. Now, I'd be lying if I said the writing for each character and screen time is created equal. My cope defense is that since we're locked into Haruhiro's perspective for the majority of the show, a character like Chihiro could be insanely dynamic and complex, but since Haruhiro isn't close to her, we don't get to see that. And her purpose as a character is showing that. Unfortunately, I can't cope that hard, so I'm willing to bet it kind of just boils down to... yeah, Small gripe aside, it's this group we get to see progress, like hardly being able to kill one goblin to being able to kill two. By nature, a series prioritizing the characters of this world rather than any greater plot, we see more of Monoto's party beyond what they do as volunteer soldiers, like personal habits, hobbies, how they choose to spend their time together as a group. And this leaks into their outings, as a lot of monster hunts will start off or include a scene where everyone talks about their respective class or whatever else. On one side, it gives a look at the entire other world that we don't get to see alongside Haruhiro. On the downside, the first few episodes are less about the characters' lives or classes or information they gathered and a lot more about... Actually, here, let me grab this graphic again. This is primarily the fault of Ranta, and while I get his purpose in the show being an internal antagonistic force due to his behavior within the group, that doesn't change the fact that it's literally the first downtime conversation in the anime, and it's really uncomfortable. Thankfully, it's not just boob talk. There are character interactions that show that this is, albeit flawed, a party that spends a lot of their time together. Monoto and Moguzo have patience for Ranta's annoying or crude antics, but Haruhiro and Yume, not so much, even escalate a situation when need be. Haruhiro and Monoto talk at night about how Grimgar is. Yume and Chihiro are often bound together and have a friendship we aren't privy to. Ranto and Moguzo seem to be around each other a lot. And it's not even mentioning that we get these characters alone, existing in Grimgar, walking around town, rock climbing, fishing. God, I love fishing. Or how Moguzo likes to cook and make carvings. Because of how much time we spend out of combat, which would probably be described as living, we've reached this whole level of care as they're fighting. If something happens to any of these characters, the party will lose that cook. They will lose their leader. They will lose their... So yeah, sometimes you actually root for the goblins.
Ranta's a valuable member of the team and is also valuable on a narrative level. She creates tension within the group. He isn't a badly written character, but he is a character written to be bad.
Combat is engaging beyond a thought of I hope our guys don't die. I've touched on it before, but there is such an attention to detail that is honestly rare in anime. Each character has specific eyes for the animators as to how they handle the weight of their equipment and how they personally go on the route of raising the mortality rate of goblins. So far, I've specified how they effectively fail, which is a funny if not genuine way of phrasing how they fight.
Home run!
But they do start to get better. After some musical montages, they begin to get, pretty competent, and the way Grimgar is told requires this growth to be done in a very specific way. This is neither a video game mechanic themed world where stats and abilities receive number representations, nor is it a world where people can just do absurdly inhuman things if they do a bunch of push-ups. So the only tangible way to show how a character has grown is the tiny animation details that show how used to living this adventurer lifestyle they are. Everyone knows how to utilize their equipment and hesitate less at the resistance of an enemy. Naturally, they aren't great. Haruhiro can botch a backstab, Ranta is sloppy, but they're getting better. While it's still behind where some stories would choose for their characters to start, the fact that we see how they originally performed to here, it's great, and that's why Grimgar is so beautiful and so human, seeing how people who had no business being what we would call adventurers slowly picking up that mantle. We appreciate that growth because we saw the struggles beforehand, like having to pick plants to make sure they have something to eat, or how much of a win it feels like when Haruhiro is finally able to afford a second pair of underwear. It's not much, but their progress is just enough to feel like they can get the momentum they need to make it in this role, to act like a real party, and maybe one day get their volunteer soldier badges. And then Monoto dies. After 26 days in Grimgar, he's shot in the back with an arrow and doesn't have enough magic to heal himself. There isn't a way to revive him. There's no last moment of retaliation to settle the score that would give us some satisfaction along with our grief. There isn't even a goal bigger than us that can distract us until we're ready to grieve. There's a part in the story that I always refer back to when bringing up specific moments, and that's the very first goblin kill. As Monoto's party is fighting a lone goblin they managed to get the drop on, we see how desperate it is to survive no matter the cost. And we also get some of the less glorious details of this fight, like Ranta noting the tactile feedback of his blade hitting a bone. When they finally get the kill, it's nauseating. No one celebrates because once the adrenaline of fighting is gone, they have to think about what happened. Despite this being what everyone has been striving to do, it is hardly a victory bell moment. The point I'm trying to make is that fighting in the world of Grimgar is messy and cruel, and the cruelest part is that it works both ways. With Monoto's sudden death, the party he left behind has no choice but to accept this fact. Everything I've talked about regarding this show and its characters is actually how they were before Monato's death, which is why when I talked about all of the characters, I didn't elaborate on Haruhiro too much. That's because it isn't until he becomes the party leader that he truly comes into his own as a character, as the main character. Haruhiro is about as competent as anyone else and probably less confident, but he was the first one to take charge when Minato was dying. He also demonstrates whatever shreds of pride the party has. Funeral expenses for Minato could have been covered, and the leader of the stronger party from the group everyone was isekai'd with offered a gold piece to show his condolences.
Your friend is dead. Sad.
Which is an insane amount of money compared to what we've seen so far. Haruhiro refuses both of these on the behalf of the party, not even checking on what everyone else would think. He also tries to be aware of how others fight, like knowing Moguzo can't tank as well without a helmet, and he tries understanding how other people are, being willing to talk to Ranta even at his least cooperative. He for sure makes mistakes, some that Minato probably wouldn't have made, like replacing Minato just a few days after he died with a new Percival consultant half the party. Minato wouldn't have done that. Minato wouldn't have replaced Minato. And with Grimgar being so human, being so beautiful, it's that mistake that actually leads into one of the most emotionally cathartic anime moments I have seen. Haruhiro talks to Yume after her and Shiru have been distant from the rest of the party, which boils over them talking about Monato's passing and what that did to everyone, and this display of grief. This is the beauty of Grimgar, just as much as this is the beauty of Grimgar. There's enough room for all of this without it having to be exaggerated because of how ultimately goalless Grimgar is. If we had to fight the Demon King or something, we wouldn't have time to have this slice of life, gentle look into being an adventurer. But much like how life goes, the party resolves enough to kill goblins with their new party member Mary, who isn't exactly the most cooperative or pleasant to be around. If there's something she doesn't want to do, she isn't gonna do it. If it's a bad plan, she won't be there. This cold exterior is the result of Mary not being in a much better position than the party she just joined. Most of her first party got absolutely squad wiped in a not dissimilar way to how Minato died. Something Frieren publicly admits to stealing, here's my proof. This character arc shows that death is a real factor to anyone in Grimgar. That said, I would be remiss to say that it's a major theme. Yeah, characters die, but we spend more time grieving than seeing it. With that in mind, I would say rather than death, overcoming death and moving on is a major theme here. This and everything else in the show is encapsulated magnificently, both in writing and presentation. With maybe a bit overkill 44-song OST by No Name, each with grounded titles that illustrate with the back of the album alone what Grimgar is like, and gorgeous background art, it displays so perfectly that Grimgar is a rough but beautiful world, which was intentional. Originally, Grimgar was going to be a more medieval-style looking show, but the writer requested specifically that Grimgar be a place that people would want to visit, and with this watercolor sketch look, this idea was nailed.
Let's go!
Oh, and we aren't done growing with just being pretty cool, because we have gone past a party that's okay to a party that actually gets character sheets. We're starting to see Haruhiro's party succeed while flashing some personality. They still got some kinks to work out, but so much progress has been made in just 12 or so episodes. Everyone's now well adapting to Grimgar even off the battlefield. If you remember, from like 10 minutes ago, Grimgar is an isekai where no one remembers their previous world. Faint memories are there, but it's not fully clicked, so to speak. Personally, I think that was just introduced to have a group of people that have to be adventurers with no knowledge or experience of the world. They have to be adventurers. And anyway, besides the killing of creatures that really don't want to die, that also kill your teammates who also don't want to die, Grimgar is a gorgeous place. It would be a crime to not specify how much of a pivotal role Hitoshi Kaneko had in defining the feeling of this location. Grimgar's backgrounds are illustrated beautifully in a way that I haven't seen in other anime. The entire world looks like a watercolor painting more akin to concept art. The leaves spill out of their outlines, our main city not making a lot of sense in the skyline, but none of these are negatives because it builds so much character for this world. And the lighting? Each scene is cast with a color that creates the atmosphere, not just how the scene looks with fire bouncing off the walls or how you can tell the sun's position without seeing a single establishing shot. This extra bit of attention gives not only how the world looks, but how it feels. Now, as much as I hate to say it, Grimgar isn't grounded one-to-one with reality. Like I touched on before, there's an undetermined line between real-world logic and video game logic, which is lovely. A lot of fantasy anime try to gamify certain aspects of its role to make things easier to digest. In Danmachi, enemies drop crystals that are worth money and can level up, for example. In Grimgar, if you want to make money, you gotta kill a creature that has something valuable on it. Just like why you would kill goblins in real life. However, points away from realism, there is literal magic. There are certain non-magical skills as well, like Ranta's exhaust, that aren't natural movement, and Moguzo has a skill called Warcry that stuns enemies that has some kind of unspoken cooldown. Not quite game-like, but there's also that line Haruhiro's dagger can follow that pops up sometimes that guarantees a kill, a mechanic that Demon Slayer would steal. Yes, I have proof. This commitment to trying to make a real-feeling game world shows a lot of love to JRPGs, something that our author is more than happy to talk about in his afterwords. But that's not the main thing I took from these, because there is a beautiful story told in these afterwords, with our main character being the author. Before the Grimgar anime was announced, Aojumanji much preferred to work alone, which is why his medium of choice is writing novels, but it's because he feels like he has the most control over writing novels. When the anime was in the works, he was excited, but considered the anime not his at all. But as Jumanji worked with the staff, this apprehension slowly disappeared, creating a new avenue of art for him. This was seen in the fact that he was one of the writers on an anime original production called Fairygon, an opportunity he would have never been up for before, and I think that personal arc is beautiful, especially based on the fact that one of Grimgar's biggest themes is learning to work with others. Oh, by the way, there was a goal in the series. Haruhiro and party wanted to avenge Monato to take out the goblins that killed their leader, which they do. And just after that happens, they finally buy their volunteer soldier badges, even one for Monato because they wouldn't have made it this far without him. Grimgar of Ashes and Illusions has its issues, but Grimgar managed to get a fairly devoted fanbase despite all of that by telling a wonderful story. A story of struggle, death, peace, anxiety, the unknown, a story that's truly human. Grimgar may not be perfect, but it sure is beautiful. And if you made it to the end, thanks for watching! If you enjoyed the video, please consider doing the stuff that YouTubers normally beg for. I want to give special thanks to Sticko Media Entertainment Stake the Player for the lovely glow trail animation, and Yusu Riru, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, for this artwork of my new mascot Mavis. All the proper links are in the description. If you want to see more of me beyond whatever I call an upload schedule, I do stream weekly every Thursday on this site. I don't know if saying the name is a no-no on YouTube, but all that aside, I will see everyone next time.